It was dark and quiet in the cell. The only sound is the hum of the air system. The man bound in the cell has his arms and legs chained, keeping him from so much as scratching an itch. Various infusion tubes feed nutrition, saline, and unknown chemicals into his bloodstream. Which ones feed him and which ones poison him, not even his captors are certain. Other tubes remove waste from his body, so he doesn't need to move. He doesn't know how long he was in the dark. He remembers dark, quiet, restless dreams. He remembers waking into a darkness that is indistinguishable from his dreams. Nothing feels real, nothing feels connected. It is all shadows cast upon shadows, and only now does the man start to feel his mind sharpen some. He remembers that he was not always a prisoner. He remembers who he is. He remembers being powerful. He remembers seeking more power. And finally, he remembers being captured. He remembers an insignificant little insect who thought of themselves as a hero. Someone who would be a little less than an insignificant waste of time to someone as great as the Necromancer. And yet, this little hero actually depowered the Necromancer, actually captured him and put him in his prison. The Necromancer hasn't bothered remembering faces in a very long time, but he was certain he would recognize the face if he ever saw it again. The Necromancer, in his chair, noticed an old cathode ray television screen across from him. The screen flipped on and warmed up, making a buzzing noise as a face gradually came into focus on the screen. Another unfamiliar face to the Necromancer. A static-filled voice came across the screen, trying to get his attention. The Necromancer refused to pay attention until the voice threatened to turn on the poison that was keeping him out of his mind again. He then turned to the face. The face said he wanted to hear the Necromancer's story. As long as he heard the Necromancer's story, they would keep the IV clean, and he could focus. While the Necromancer did not care about sharing his story, he did care about having a clear head. He figured if he could keep a clear head long enough, he could find a way out of his prison. He had been imprisoned before, and he has always escaped, sometimes by outsmarting the prison, and sometimes by outlasting both his jailers and his jail. You want to know my history? Well, I could fill entire libraries with my life history, and I have. But strangely enough, they have a habit of disappearing when my enemies find them. I am beginning to think it has something to do with me. However, I think I can give you the abridged version, just so you know who it is you have in this pathetic attempt of a cell. I was born a long time ago, one of the first mortal children born after the shadow of death first arrived from the sunless lands. The eldest of 7 children, 3 boys. So, in your timeline, you can put that as the age of myths that the historians are unable to date. I was the eldest, and we grew up among the immortals. Why wouldn't we? We didn't know what the shadow meant, and we didn't know what death was. Not to us. We had known that animals could die, trees could be cut down, and the sun went to sleep every night. We didn't realize that people could die as well. Why would we? I watched my father come home many times bearing wounds that nowadays would be lethal. We would be careful with my mother and with the children, since we couldn't just seal our wounds with clay, nor could we heal with ease. As we grew, my next eldest brother kept garnering favor with our elders. beings that you may now call gods, but to us, they were just our leaders. He would offer the firstborn of his flock, and they would love the meat he provided. I provided from my fields, but they never liked it as much. I didn't give them the very first of my harvest, but I had to be wise and save some to grow later. I thought it was foolish for my brother to offer the firstborn of a flock, since a lot of the time the sheep only had one child, and offering the firstborn meant he had a small flock. When I was 15, I took my brother out to the fields. It was there I hoped he would apologize to me, and we could begin the process of making up. Instead, when I was alone with him, he told me he was expecting my apology. I don't know why he wanted me to apologize. He was the one seen favorably by our elders. So instead of talking, we fought. We fought many times as children. It was what brothers did from the beginning, and it is what brothers will do at the end. I didn't care about fragility back then. I didn't know about death. All I knew was I was angry at my brother, angry at him for being everyone's favorite, angry that I wasn't recognized for my hard work, angry that I wasn't good enough. So I grabbed a rock in the fields that I tended. I picked up a rock, and I brought it down on my brother's face. Again, and again, and again. When I was done, his face was a mess of blood, bone, and flesh. Funny thing, I don't even remember his name anymore. I don't remember what I yelled at him. I don't remember what it was he said to make me mad enough to pick up that stone. I don't remember the name of my siblings, my parents, not even the name of the family I was from. I don't even remember my own name. What I do remember is that is what my brother's face looked like after smashing his face in with that rock. I remember how it looked like an ox stepped on his face. I remember the blood on my hands and the blood on the fields. I stood up with the blood on my hands, the blood that started to soak into the soil, and that all the plants that touched his blood began to die. I remember trying to wake him up. Surely he was just pretending. Still, even when I tried to shake him awake, he wouldn't awaken. Maybe he was knocked out, so I kept shaking him. His blood got all over my clothes and my skin, and he still wouldn't wake up. He was gone, and in desperation, I ran back to my home to get my parents, thinking they could help. I came home covered in blood, and I was desperately trying to explain what was happening to my parents. They thought at first I might have slept with a girl as her period came. When they realized that wasn't it, they were hopeful it was animal blood, and I was just panicking after I fought it off. When I explained it was my brother, they ran out to the fields with me. I remember the ring of death surrounding his body, a place where the plants could not grow, but the animals, on the other hand. I left his body alone for only an hour, and already it was being torn apart by scavengers. Birds had pecked at his eyes, wild dogs tore at his stomach, and the ants infested his chest, already building a colony in his body. My parents wailed that night and chased away the scavengers. We tried everything we could think of to wake him, but nothing worked. When the sun rose and his body was bloated, we finally accept the fact that he was gone. His body remained, but whatever made him a person was gone forever, and I was the one who killed him. I tried to make it right. I asked every elder if there was something I could do, but death was so brand new, they barely knew what it was, and they definitely did not know how to undo it. In time, as other members of the village died, I became convinced I could find out why. I was living in the age of myths, the heroes who stole fire from the gods, who held up the skies, who won wars against titans, who pulled up islands from the oceans, and who brought cosmic gifts to humanity, weren't just stories, they were our neighbors. So I left home, and my family said they didn't blame me, but I could see that they were upset at what I did. And I was still angry at them for making my dead brother their favorite son. Even after death, all they could talk about was him. I was suffering. I wasn't the only child left, but it wasn't my fault for killing him. I didn't know what death was. As I left, one of the elders left a mark on my forehead, one that showed those who saw me as a murderer, but it also was supposed to keep me safe from being murdered myself. So, marked safe from murder, I traveled, first by heading west further than the sun could set. I asked the firstborn of Kronos if he would release my brother, so at least I could make it right with my family. That bastard king told me that my brother didn't want to live anymore. This life of his was over. I called him a bastard to his face for not bringing my brother back. He didn't care about how much I was suffering, what kind of pain I was in because of my brother's death. Unable to kill me himself when he saw my mark, Hades got a different idea. He was less than happy as he threw me out of his kingdom, barring me from using the ferry over the river that separated the sunless and the soulful lands. If the mark was a first taste of immortality, then Hades' curse was a full meal, and it was given as a punishment. I moved on, realizing I wouldn't cross over the river, so I tried to find other ways to bring back my brother, or some way to stop death from taking anyone from my family. Even as I traveled the world, I received news of my family's death, carried by who else? A carrier of death. I was the last of my family, with my father deciding to travel to the sunless lands. My mother died. My sisters, my remaining brother, and all of their children were dead from plague. I had no children myself, although not for lack of effort. I just couldn't create life myself. Another curse, I think, but I don't know from whom. I traveled back home and found it empty of the living. There was no one left to bury my family, and it was underneath that full moon that I found the first type of undead that I had ever met. I am sure that there were other undead beforehand. The type that came back doesn't even exist anymore. An evolutionary dead end that only lasted a few centuries. A random chance that happened once and will never happen again. In the full moonlight, their bodies moved again. They acted out life in that full moonlight, cooking, playing, sleeping, fighting, and hunting. Ghosts that could only mock life, but still it offered me some hope. This random chance, this random act, showed me that there could be a hope for undoing death. Although what happened was not my goal, it was enough for me to get started. I sought out restless spirits. I sought out the great battles that were full of undead soldiers who still fought. I even sought out the darkness of the world to seek out ways to undo death. It was on one of those dark forays, when I spoke to a serpent with many silver tongues and one mouth, that I learned that my immortality had limits. that I couldn't cross over the river between life and death on the ferry. I could be dragged across. I could go underneath the river. I could be tossed across. So many nasty ways around that little stipulation. So I made a deal with that many-tongued serpent for a new type of immortality. I would not be killed by any man nor beast, not during the day nor night, neither indoors nor outdoors. It felt flawless, but as time went on, I realized that there were exploitable loopholes that could be used, even in that contract. Neither day nor night, that still leaves the evening and early morning open. Neither indoors nor outdoors, that still leaves doorways, porches, gazebos, gardens, and greenhouses as places that are neither indoor nor outdoor. And there's plenty of threats out there that are neither man nor beast. Disease, celestial events, and then there were threats that were quite literally both beast and man at the same time. So, as I learned about necromancy and how to bring back the dead in my many attempts to undo my brother's death, I also learned how to extend my life. Every time I tried to bring my family back, what I brought back wasn't them. Sufferers, Draugen, Starved, the Revenants, all different attempts to undo death, and as time went on, and I began to glimpse eternity in all of its glory, I saw that my family came back in different ways. Sometimes when I was wandering, I would see my family again, but they weren't my family. Those laughs, the way they smiled, their eyes, I could see my family in them. Their bodies changed, their lifetimes changed, but it was still them, separated by centuries or even millennia. But they were reincarnating, but they never came back correctly. They never remembered me at all, no matter how many times I stalked them, how many times I kidnapped them, or how many times I killed them with my hands. They never remembered me, not consciously at least. As time went on, I found that knowledge of the soul and the knowledge of the mind are not the same thing. As I found ways to separate the soul from the mind, I learned to question the souls, and the souls did remember me. They said that they were trying to get me to do the right thing, that I just needed to move on to death to make everything right again, that I could still be redeemed. They believe that I could still do good. And every time I told them that I would stop death, that I would make the world a place where no one ever has to die, that I just needed more time, that I just needed to keep trying. Over time, I had many students through the ages, students that I could teach and who would also teach me. Schools were formed in my name, and they fell just as easily, and I kept moving on, trying to find that one cure for death. Eventually, after losing the city that I built for the last time, I moved north beyond the northern vortex, and I built the Palace of Bone. There I was safe from the heroes of the world, annoying pests that get into everything you're working on, contaminating good science and trying to stop your hard work. My palace was built, so I focused on my quest for the cure for death. I saw my mission as two separate problems. Death needed both a vaccine and a cure. A vaccine, because if I could keep myself from dying, that would keep me safe as I did my work on the second part. A cure to undo death once it happened. Even as my family reincarnated time and again, they were never right. They never acted the way they were supposed to. They always looked at me disappointed. They always were trying to get me to change my actions. They kept begging me not to kill them. They never understood how important my work was, how it was important for me to keep killing them, to keep kidnapping them, to keep experimenting on them, to try and get it just right. I needed time. I needed practice. I needed answers to the cure for death, and I sought out so many different forms of immortality. The trouble, though, was no matter how many different forms of immortality I found, there was always a catch, a weakness, a cost, something. If I could not be killed by any man, I was still vulnerable to everyone else. If I stole a god of love's protection, I was vulnerable to mistletoe. If I stole the heart of a goddess, she bit me in half, so I lost her heart. If I stole immortal peaches, they could still be removed from my stomach. If I had a fountain of youth, the fountain would dry up eventually. If I crossed my name out of the book of death, the name could still be written in. If I sold my name for immortality, then I would have to obey whoever had my name. Still, I bargained for many different forms of immortality, just to cover everything, and still it wasn't enough. There was always a way, so I learned how to transfer my psyche and soul to my locus around my neck. I used it to transfer my mind and spirit to a new body when I was killed, and I sought out ways to find out more and to learn more. That was when I started giving gifts. I learned that if I gave gifts, I could have an easier time finding people I could experiment on. I could find my family again, and I could make my way into any home without consequence because the Winter Man was always welcome. It was around that time that I learned about a new form of immortality, the closest to perfect that I had ever seen. During the Age of Ash, hundreds of thousands of years after my birth, and only 75,000 years before now, I encountered a young goddess walking among a visiting tribe, a tribe that sought out the hospitality of the Winter Man, although that wasn't the term they used then. I learned not only could gods be killed, their bodies could be used. Her flesh made a new doll, and her bones made my staff. Now I was untouchable to the gods, so I thought I was free from their trickery. I learned, however, that there would be little buzzing problems that were sent against me, people who thought they were more important than they actually were, who thought they would be the ones to stop the nasty necromancer from their campfire stories and oral legends. All who were sent against me fell, whether they wielded an unbreakable magical ring, a bow that could pierce the clouds, a hammer with lightning, a sword drawn from a stone, staff from a dragon king, or a fish hook that could draw islands out of the ocean. They all fell. Sure, they would ruin my work. They would kill my students, wreck my schools, undo my progress. They might even get lucky and kill my body. But I would just possess another body, and they would come after me again, and we would keep this dance going. A waste of my time because every moment I was fighting them or preparing for the next fight was another moment I wasn't looking for a cure for death. I don't get why they tried so hard to stop me. It didn't matter how many times I was stopped, nor how many experiments they liberated. I would work on it again. It only served to annoy me, and eventually even the strongest of them would grow old, and then they would either mess up and die at my hand, or at Time's hand. It was only recently I found something that could keep me safe from the eyes of the gods. There was something that traveled all of the paths. Golden-eyed child. I don't know if they're a god, devil, fae, or something else entirely. All I know is that they are old. so old that even the oldest elder where I once lived knew about the golden-eyed child when they were once young. But it wasn't the golden-eyed child's identity that intrigued me. It was their power. They could walk through time, weave time, and even skip from the notice of the gods themselves. My staff could keep me safe from the gods' touch, but they could still see me, and they could still send heroes after me. So I would have to find the eyes of the golden-eyed child to steal their power. It was tricky, though. The golden-eyed child was too powerful to be caught alive, and if they saw me coming, they could escape easily. And if I tried to go after one after they died, their eyes no longer had their power. I had to collect the eyes from one that was still alive, but also weak enough not to escape. So I found the twins in the Gothlands. Both children of the golden-eyed child, and they both inherited a single eye. When I made my way to them, however, they were already dead and eaten. It was quick work to find their flesh and reform their bodies. By that time, I had gotten good at necromancy. However, I still couldn't create a permanent cure for death, and my family's original bones were already dust and could not be collected for necromancy. I could undo these children's death because judgment had not yet come for them, so they could also have their eyes harvested. Their power was preserved in my staff, as I also learned how to weave time, and I was unseen and untouched by the gods above. Even as I learned to weave time, I could not walk it and undo what I had done. But I was certain I could undo my murder and take all my knowledge to the past. Before I could figure it out, though, this insect stole my staff from me. It doesn't matter, though. My power is vast, and they would not be able to destroy the bones of a goddess. Sooner or later, I will escape. You will get stupid someday, or one of my students will free me, or your prison will just stop existing, and I will just walk out of here. And I have accumulated enough power and wisdom that there is no power on earth that can stop me. So I will tell you what, mysterious voice. Let me go now, and I will just leave you alive, and you can live long enough to die of old age. I will, however, endure, and I will make my way out. The voice sighs, and the figure shakes their head as they speak. You're really too far gone, aren't you? You don't even recognize your brother's face anymore, the voice said, as the necromancer stared at the face. He tried. He really tried to recognize, but that face didn't look like his brother's face. His brother's eyes looked like something. They had color, right? Or maybe they were gray? Or maybe he had rare red eyes? He was certain his brother had eyes, but this man on the screen had eyes too. I didn't come back as punishment. I came back each time because I believed that I could help you. I believed in my brother. I believed you could be talked out of this insanity. When they found me to speak to you, I wouldn't believe them when they said you forgot everything, that you were driven by hubris and you've forgotten love. And here you are. You've forgotten my face. You've forgotten my name. Atavata. You forgot your own name, your own face. You've broken my heart and my body so many times. I was your experiment. I tried learning under you. I went willingly. I went fighting. I tried talking. I tried defending. I even tried ignoring you. And you always found me. You always took me apart. And you always killed me. The man on the monitor is crying now. Every life I have lived, every time I reincarnated, every time I was brought back by you, every additional chance I got, it was you who killed me. It was you who disappointed me. It was you who shed my blood. Everyone else in the family gave up on you millennia ago, and I hoped that they were wrong. What I see now, you are truly unforgivable. Not because what you do isn't forgivable, but because you won't let yourself be forgiven. This will be the last time. I am living a full lifetime and I am not letting myself be killed by your hand. I won't be returning, and you won't be escaping, the voice said as the necromancer struggled against his restraints. He tried to recall his words of power or sigils he could conjure with his thoughts, or even just formulate a strategy, but nothing connected in his head, and he could not recall the words, nor the sigils. Struggling to recall or access your power? I wouldn't bother. The Palace of Bone has been burned, so that source of power is gone. Red Prince made sure all of your available esoteric energy was burned away before you got to this prison. As for your wisdom, well, that's where the IV drip comes in handy. They're dripping ethyl alcohol directly into your bloodstream. A very small amount leads to intoxication within minutes. Honestly, your dose would be lethal for most people, but luckily, you're not most people. You're immune to all forms of poison. However, since anything can be a poison if taken too much of, and a lot of poisons can have beneficial effects if small doses could be taken, the curse has to work around both of those things. And of course, most forms of poison immunity do not see getting intoxicated as the same thing as being poisoned. So, as long as we can keep you intoxicated, so while your liver may be fine, your mind, on the other hand, will not be able to focus on the future. The necromancer struggles, barely comprehending as their thoughts and body feel too slow, even though they were both still. Alcohol has the added benefit of not just intoxicating you now, but it will break down the neural connections and render your long-term memory less and less accessible, including your sigils, your power, and your wisdom. Your memories will fade, your emotions will crumble, and you'll be left here with an empty head and a heavy heart. Someday we will find a way to kill you, and you won't be able to escape from here if you forget where you are, the voice said, and the necromancer stirred, remembering he was upset, and he could see tears on the face, but he couldn't remember why he was upset, nor why the voice on the monitor was crying. And just to twist the knife a little further, brother, no power on Earth may stop your students from reaching you, but you aren't on Earth, the voice said, and the screen switched from his face to a view of Earth from the lunar surface. The necromancer was not on Earth. He was trapped far from Earth, far from anyone he knew. He wasn't going to get out of this prison, but what came after this prison terrified him even more. A much worse prison in death. Warden Habel turned off the screen. His heart felt lighter, finally telling his brother off. After all of these years, he finally had enough of giving him second chances. Every time it ended with Habel's blood on the necromancer's hands, where the necromancer insisted that killing was a love language. The rest of the family gave up on trying to save the necromancer a long time ago. Habel was the only one left. Even holding the necromancer in prison, even slowly erasing his mind with alcohol, Habel still had that twinge inside of him that said that his brother could be saved. Maybe the alcohol would clear out the corruption in his brother's mind. Maybe they could start over again after the necromancer died and reincarnated. All Warden Haybell had to do was keep his brother safe from the world and keep the world safe from his brother. Haybell owed a lot to the journalist, and all he had to give was this story, which Haybell gave freely, eager to share his own story with the world. However, he did have to get back to work. It did take a lot to run the Stevenius Crater prison, and his bosses at Black Moon Prison Corps had a lot more prisoners for him to process in the near future.